Welcome to Audiation in the Wild with your hosts, Beau and Eric Rasmussen. Season 5, Episode 4, The Pros and Cons of Musical Notation.
All right, Eric.
Hey, Beau.
Let's talk notation. Why do we hate notation? I'm just kidding.
Notation is the devil of the music industry. No, we know better. We both understand that music learning theory gets called out for disliking notation, but it's not true.
Yeah.
It just has its time and its place. I can't imagine a world without notation. We wouldn't have Stravinsky. We wouldn't have Bach. We wouldn't have all that stuff that's so great to go listen to an orchestra play, or take music into a music studio and have these badass musicians just play the hell out of these black little specks on the paper. So there's people that can do that kind of thing, and my gosh, how poor would we be if we didn't have books and all we had was spoken word? So there's your analogy. On the other hand, I don't want anybody talking to me until they understand the language. I don't want people playing notation by virtue of, names of notes. That's devastating for a musician to learn the names of notes. That's the end of all good musicianship, when you start just playing, counting, and naming notes.
Well, and I would definitely say I think there's more under the hood than what you're even saying there. Names of notes, I think can be done better and worse. But especially, I think the spirit of what you're saying that I do agree with is that when you teach people to look at a symbol and you give it a name like A, B, C, and it's out of context, there's no tonality, there's no harmonic function, they're gonna be at a deficit in their audiation, right? And I've been saying for, I don't know, years on this podcast, you could do the same thing with solfege. You really could. And I think it's been done, but it's definitely, there's more egregious teaching using note names than with solfege, for sure. But, can I share a fun experience that I've had in the past few years where I teach classical guitar, and I grew up playing classical guitar, and you learn, you teach the great pieces, right? There's lots of new pieces, but you teach the great pieces, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting now is playing pieces, because I'm 36 and I started playing when I was 12 or so. I have gone back and taught some pieces recently and in the past year or two that I definitely wasn't audiating the full extent of the harmony then, or something about my harmonic audiation is better now. And when I look at the notation, my experience is vastly different than it was.
Oh, for sure.
And it's
you're bringing more meaning to the page, which is what audiation is. Notational audiation is the foundation for any good notation. Other than that, there's just do this chunk of music and then do this chunk of music. So you have just some words that say, here's the A section, here's what we do in the B section, and you don't need the music, but you've got some kind of crib notes for, playing your studio gig.
Sure.
You've got a great musician that comes in, he doesn't need anything, but he needs to have the map. It's more of a map than it is about the notes or anything. But then there's also the notes people. And I think there's a lot of value in both of those things.
Yeah. I like the map analogy a lot, and it's funny, when I started playing saxophone when I was, 12 or so, may have been just before that. I've shared the story on the podcast before, but I got Disney solos for alto sax. So I got a method book, the band method book we needed.
Pocahontas, was that out yet?
It was on there, and that's a sick song. Colors of the Wind.
Yeah,
Colors of the Wind is nuts.
So,
but the great thing about, with where I was with my informal music, I had done a lot of singing, and I was, I had done a lot of just good things for my development. I got the book, it had a fingering chart, I knew the songs. I wasn't reading the rhythm. I was reading the notes to tell me where I should put my fingers on the sax, but I could hear the song in my head, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just phrasing it as I heard it, and
Yeah.
it was clear to me that that was the point of the notation,
You had
even
the
at that point.
oral, and
Oh yeah,
yeah, right. So, and you could sing along with the stuff, and now you needed help translating what your ear brain could do, what your audiation could do into
that's right.
fingerings. So the notation was a bridge between your audiation and your fingerings.
That's literally what it was. And you know, it's funny. I remember this book had like 12, 13 songs. There were 2 or 3 songs in that book that I actually didn't know because I hadn't watched the Disney movies that go with them. And the songs had no meaning to me because it didn't come with a CD and I didn't have the songs in my memory. So I just didn't play those. So I played the 10 that I knew. So even at that age, I had some intuition of, I'm not going to fake my way through these songs. But, maybe can we talk about how in standard music ed for
Oh,
teaching,
no.
can we talk about how
I don't
notation
know
is
if I can
typically
talk
introduced?
about it. I might get sick.
Well, I think it's good to juxtapose like what's going on when someone shows up for a maybe we can use 2 different contexts in group lessons or in individual lessons. But what are we advocating, and what is normally done, like versus what's normally done? It's not versus, but I mean, not.
Well,
But I just mean like
it's
what's
pretty much versus.
it's versus.
It's pretty much versus Godzilla versus Kong. So I see this, or used to see it all the time, and I know it's still going on, and I know they still teach it. That's exactly the same way it's been for 25 years that I've been here. That school systems around here, they pass out the recorders to their 3rd graders, and then they pass out wind instruments mostly and some strings to the 4th graders.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has to play the recorder one year, and then the next year you kind of choose if you want to be in band or orchestra or both or whatever. And everybody gets their instrument, and the first thing is a whole note. So we're going to learn a whole note. And we got the horns together. We spent 20 minutes of the half hour just getting the horns together. And now we're going to tap our foot. I want everybody tap your foot like this. All right? And everybody sit up straight. All right? And now I want you to put this button down on your horn. And you go, oh, 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 and the kids basically, die. And it's like, and that's about it for the first lesson. And then the next lesson, we're going to learn another note. But, I'm making it really bad, but basically there's no singing involved. It's all about the technical facility that you need to produce a sound. And I'm not even going to say a tone or anything,
Right.
just make a sound on the instrument.
But what I'm thinking of specifically is why does that not help produce audiation? And what I can see is that there's no as a serious question, because
Yeah.
I think the problem is that, I mean, 2 main things, and then see what you think here. There's no tonal context usually being hammered, so there's going to be no tonal
it's
or
just
harmonic.
a note. It's a note
Yeah.
out of blue air, thin air, blue air. Why it's blue, I don't know.
But then there's the way the rhythm is done too also has a lot of concepts in terms of counting, and it approaches things
Yeah,
like you said,
we
whole
covered
notes.
that
There's
in
no
the last
micro beats. Like
episode.
it's funny, both the tonal and the rhythmic thing when it's done bad. And I for one think there are spectrums to how bad this can be done. So there are some teachers that can introduce notation and still kind of teach audiation alongside it. But then there really are a lot of teachers who there's notation, and then there are none of the other requisite activities being done in that classroom in that student's education at large. And I think that's a huge problem.
So
specifically.
basically you pass out the band book
Mm-hmm.
or the trumpet book that
Mm-hmm.
you use for that lesson, and it starts with a whole note, or some might be more enlightened and use quarter notes because that's actually better for certain things. You know, there's
The old
technical.
Eric, the old classical guitar books from like 100 years ago plus, it's all microbeats. It's all triple meter and duple meter microbeats for all the intro pieces.
That's
I'm
a
like,
hell
these
of a lot
people
better.
knew what they were doing.
Yeah, we didn't have guitars in in school at all.
That has blown my mind. Like just seeing that, it's all the
Yeah,
old classical guitar stuff.
no, it's pretty
Anyways,
awful, and uh, there's so so many places to go, but the bottom line is it's all mechanical information or information for your brain, and it's too many things for your brain to do because you got to put this finger through the ring or this finger on top of this key. Well, they all look the same right now. All the
totally.
keys, all the you, you barely, so you're not familiar with the instrument, and then when it comes time to make a sound, there's nothing you're shooting toward. You,
That's why I brought up the
you
Disney
just start
solos
you
example.
like what you said when you go out to the field to count sheep, and there's no sheep, so you just count.
Yeah, you're playing the instrument and then gonna see what it sounds like after.
Yeah,
You're not there's no intention to the sound.
yeah, and
You're
there's
not hearing.
some that have a recording, so they yeah, so okay, you get to listen to a good trumpet player play this, and there you go. That now you're off to a far better start because you're
So
imitating.
let's zoom in on this because there are camps in this specific issue. So there's teachers that teach using notation from day one, and some of these teachers are very pro listen to recordings, listen to an example of your teacher play it 1st.
Mm-hmm.
I've used the example of a great classical musician that I used to work with. She would always play the students an impeccable example of something right before they played it. And
Mm-hmm.
I was convinced that had a huge, and her phrasing was unreal, her rhythm was unreal, everything was off the charts. And they got to hear that every time.
Yeah.
Now you compare that with a teacher who doesn't do that. Imagine you're going to take music lessons for 5 years
Yeah.
privately. I mean, that has a big impact. And because the reason I mention this is that I've worked with teachers, usually classical, because they're usually the stiffest. Although I have nothing against classical music, I'm a classical guitar player.
Right.
But the teaching pedagogy tends to be really stiff, and sometimes people are really uptight about learning to sight read, asterisk.
It's still
and
built on the conservatory, model from 200 years ago, dude.
Yeah.
You know.
But what I'm getting is a lot of these, a lot of that kind of teaching, it tries to prevent the student from hearing an example of what they're about to decode with music notation. Mm-hmm. So this is what I'm saying. Even if we introduce notation from day one, there really are better and worse ways of doing it.
Yep.
Like for example, so like one teacher could still be doing a lot of oral stuff. Like I'm thinking Paul Harris, for example. I think if a student was with Paul Harris, I wouldn't really be worried about them learning to audiate, even though he uses notation early in the process. But I think a lot of the times the reality is that's not what's happening. I think the reality is that it gets so focused.
And then
the
it's
page.
varying degrees of success that way, depending on the aptitude of the kids. And this is the thing, they need both the music aptitude and they need whatever the code deciphering brain mechanism that works at the same time. So those two things together produce the best musicians. If you don't have one, you don't have the other. You still get a good musician from the one that has high aptitude, but they can't learn through the notation bit. They go and they play in a garage band, or they go and they find their own way because they're so motivated and have the natural innate talent or aptitude.
And I think this is why I did fine with music. Concert band was not difficult for me, but I'm thinking like the private classical guitar lessons I kind of did, or the lessons in classical guitar in high school. And I had the preparatory audiation skills going into that, whatever aptitude, and also just singing a lot. I mean, I sang a lot
Mm-hmm.
from the age of,
Yeah.
0 to, I was probably
Yeah.
singing, but all the way right into concert band in high school. And I remember being given a lot of pieces I had a ton of pieces in E minor and A minor, and it made sense to me. Like I didn't have the words, the proper verbiage.
But
In
you had
terms of like,
experience of it from the literature that you listened to.
yeah, and I had my own internal concepts of like what resting tones were and what functions were.
Yep.
I knew what a 5-chord sounded like, even though I didn't really have people at that time talking to me about the theory. But I was reading
Of course you did.
notation and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and so it's funny. It's funny the way it air quote works for some people and doesn't work for other people depending on where they are. Now I still think if it had been more structured according to MLT principles, I would have gotten even more out of it,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
this is what I tend to have happen now, where students come to me, they're like, "I want to work on audiation, I want to work on sight reading," and I'm usually trying to prevent them. Don't use sight reading material that is out of context. If you are reading something, it should be something that is musically rational. Don't just play random notes. Like that doesn't make any sense. That's not a transferable
And
skill.
yeah, and thus is born the hot cross buns tune that lasts forever.
One of my experiments that I did years ago as a first notation thing I would show a student, I would show them 4 different Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars. I would show them Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in duple in major, duple in the parallel minor, so C major, C minor, and both basically all combinations, major, minor, duple, triple. And their first assignment was just to be able to point to the one that I was playing. And this at least got them looking at notation, but it starts from a super high context level. It's, can you tell what the meter that we're in is in this familiar song? And can you tell what the tonality is?
That's a great exercise.
Because if you can't start there, why are we going to start
then you're
introducing
guessing
individual
See,
pitches?
that's the whole point. What Gordon said, you establish where do is, and then here's the resting tone on the staff. And now you've got context for all the other dots on the staff. And,
Exactly.
The very first time my children read notation, they read 16 patterns because they've got them memorized.
Sure. Exactly.
But now I have to get them to look at them. But the very first time, the kids are so good at it, what I do is I start skipping around right away. So immediately I'm jumping from this tonic pattern to another tonic pattern to another tonic pattern so that they can see the difference between do, mi, do, and do, mi, and mi, do, right?
Which tends to be very useful to show someone through some kind of visual medium.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
penalty
and they already
properly.
know those patterns, but they don't know them in that order. And now they're looking at them. So what's easy? Hey, that's easy. After,
That's
of
right.
course, we've read through the patterns 2 or 3 times in the right order, and me yelling at the kids, "No, look at the board. You can't do this. I know you can do it. Val, look, I need your eyes up here. Your eyes. This is about training your eyes. If you're not looking up here, you're not learning. Come on."
So I wanna bring out something you just said something we both said, that when notation's introduced, there's obviously different ways you can do it. It should be with something the student is familiar with already. They can already audiate it. You're not asking them to read something that they don't know what it sounds like first. And that's why I think when I was a kid, I had success, because I was like, hey, I know this song. It goes like this.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got an audiational foundation before the notation. When the notation is just a theoretical, representation of a note and a rhythm and a tone, there isn't any tone or rhythm. There isn't any context for it. They're just making a sound, and the sound doesn't even make sense, especially if it's going to take a week or 2 or a month or 2 to get a decent sound even on the instrument. So you're fighting a whole lot of things, and you do got to start with something, right? So you'd start with the awful noise that usually
Well, yeah, some instruments are
comes
just
out, just
unwieldy to play.
and and of course it's going to be like that. I'm sure I sounded like that. For but I also had the image of what a trumpet sound was before I played, and I just realized that your breath had to do a lot with how to do it, pretty early. So, yeah, and had I been taught to audiate prior to the notation, well, the truth is I was audiating, just not at a very good level, and certainly not notationally audiating.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, um, what I had a story in mind earlier, and I got to tell you, I think I was in high school when it was the first time that the director played a recording of one of the pieces that we were playing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Ruslan and Ludmila.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who it was that wrote it. Famous Russian composers. I can't think offhand, but they played it on a stereo system, the stereo cart that they rolled around with the vinyl albums that they played. And I was like, oh my God, that's what it's supposed to sound like? Because I got my head buried in the page over in the trumpet section, because some of those parts are kind of rough for, high school.
Fourth trumpet on a accompaniment part. I was
I
years
always
ago.
loved playing second or third.
I'm just teasing you.
Yeah, no, I love those harmony parts.
Yeah, yeah. Years ago, I was teaching a young kid bass clarinet, doing a lot
Yeah,
of audiation stuff with him.
what a great instrument.
Beautiful sound. And he showed me a piece he was working on in concert band, and of course, he's playing, you know, some very off tangent, non-melody type part. Very interesting part. And I asked him that question, has your band director given you a recording of the piece? And he said, "Oh yeah, this guy always gives us recordings of the pieces so we can listen to our parts and find our parts." His band director gave him access to it's like some software where you could see the whole score and then single out your part and listen to it. And I said, "Wow, you're lucky because that is not the norm from what I've heard and / experienced myself. A lot of band directors don't give their students the recordings of the pieces that they're spending time learning. And a lot of the students, when they listen to the piece for the first time, they are actually surprised to hear some of the other parts.
Mm-hmm.
They've been playing these
Yep.
parts in band class every other day for a year, and they've never really heard one of the melodies. Maybe they know the obvious melody that the
Right.
flutes have or
Yep.
something, but they haven't actually audiated the piece at large or listened to it and listened to how their part fits into it. And it's kind of, these are the kind of things that can really go nuts when notation is used unskillfully or unmindfully. But
Yeah.
notation obviously has really, really powerful benefits
Yeah,
in terms
but
of
okay. So
when it's used.
listen,
Quote,
I'm going to put
properly.
up some Japanese words.
You're gonna speak them,
Some
or
words,
you're gonna.
and then somebody's going to point at it and say what it is, right? And I'll imitate it, right? And then they'll give me the next one, and I'll
Yeah.
say it, and then you say those words together, and then they'll show me 3 more, and so now I got 5 words, and I'll say those 3, 4, 5 words. Okay, these 2, I get them mixed up. Okay, now I got this. Now I got those 5. Okay. I said them. I got them. I can make the sound. I have no freaking idea what I've said or what I'm learning. I have nothing, right? And that's what we're asking kids to do,
Mm-hmm.
is to take something completely alien, if they're not taught to audiate first, and get it out through an instrument. I mean, that's where it's most useful. I mean, a lot of choirs don't use notation,
Sure.
right? and the gospel choir tradition. How great is that? You don't need the notation.
Mm-hmm.
And they make, oh my God, they're so creative. And on Wednesday they decide their arrangement. And they just pick their notes. Okay, this is where we go, and they practice it one more time, and they're ready for Sunday.
Yeah.
It's nuts how creative they are in generating, a work of music based on our oral tradition. You just get your part and go, or get your note and go. It's like you're inventing your part as you go, based on the certain rules and the years of experience you've had singing with other people that do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then let's look at some of the greatest musicians ever to have lived, ever. And, oh, by the way, it's Glinka, Mikhail Glinka, that wrote Ruslan and Ludmila. But like Joni Mitchell, Errol Garner, I keep using those people as they just don't know Joni had how many 30, 40, 50 tunings of her guitar,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a language of sound, not of paper, right? It's like crazy, that Earl Garner is just nothing but instinct. And he never learned a single note of written music, never used a single note of written music, didn't understand it. It might as well have been, Chinese script, like, to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like so many. Hans Zimmer, right? How many films has he composed?
I've never heard of Hans Zimmer.
You don't know Hans Zimmer? Oh, look.
No, I know. No, hold on. I know who Hans Zimmer is. I've never heard of Hans Zimmer not reading notation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one stretches the
Taylor
imagination.
Swift, she writes by ear and has other people write the stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Prince, Jimi Hendrix. How about Lennon and McCartney? Let's start there.
Okay, now, can I play devil's advocate for a sec?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that you don't need to be able to write it down, but these guys have the money they can spend on having somebody else put it down for them.
Sure.
Or, like that. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, what I want to bring up that there might be someone thinking at this point is, well, you mentioned a long list of, pop, jazz, non-classical musicians. Like what, Hans Zimmer is the closest person you mentioned to, someone that would roll in the classical dimension. And you brought this up before, that if you're playing, Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, the notation can be useful just to herd everyone into the same section of the song, because it's such a ridiculous journey you're going to go on to just coordinate the damn symphony.
It would be
together.
So fascinating if we could find an orchestra that would play that with no notation.
Okay, I will be part of this project if we can make a small symphony of people that is committed to audiating the Rite of Spring from memory. That's got to break some kind of record. I'd be down for that.
That would be crazy. It'd be
I don't know what I could play on that. But no, in all seriousness, though, I think I've actually had to navigate this problem a bit because I teach classical piano a bit, but more so classical guitar. And sometimes parents are concerned. They think I'm taking them on some weird jazz pop, escapade where it's like notation's bad. And that's not really what MLT stands for. I mean, I don't think that was, Gordon wasn't saying, it's all about improv and it's not about reading notation. I mean, it definitely is all about improv, but notation or just being a classical musician, there's none of this is mutually exclusive, right? So I often have to have the conversation, a bit of education with the parents, saying, okay, the student is not great at the language of music yet, so they got to get their hands around that for a couple of years. For me, anyway, I prefer doing it a couple of years before I start the notation. And a lot of it's just listen to this song, and we're going to do a lot of imitating through singing and right on the instrument. I'm not opposed to starting them on the instrument.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
You can use the instrument to do your oral if you want to.
yes.
You know, that becomes a surrogate voice for people, especially if you
Uh-huh.
don't have a voice,
Uh-huh.
for a variety of reasons, whether there's a
That would
disconnect
be such a
between the brain.
fascinating thing to do, to take a group of people who can't sing and experiment doing all kinds of oral and just learning an instrument
Yeah.
purely on the
I
keyboard.
just
I would
wonder how
love
much
that.
of it you lose the naturalness of like the muscles and all the things in your face and
Yeah,
that you didn't have. Say if at birth you can't sing or for
sure.
whatever reason because of a brain disconnect or because there's a physical mechanism somewhere that doesn't work. But I see.
What if someone lost?
I
What if after the age of 10, someone lost the ability to
yeah.
sing?
Well,
So
then they have all the
their
early
aptitude is
childhood.
stabilized. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that. Yeah. There's so many cool research studies that I could think of that would include that. Now, I taught a class of kids who were given cochlear implants in their first year or two of life.
Mm.
And those kids came to me, and one of them was really kind of average for regular population.
Mm-hmm.
I had other kids that were, it was really difficult for them.
Interesting.
But after, I forget how many lessons we had, 12 or something like that, 10 or 12 at least, that they would be able to tell me tonic and dominant, major, minor.
Mm.
They could do that. They were 4 or 5 years old, and they
Mm-hmm.
were smart kids. But it was really fascinating to work with a population that didn't have sound until they were born, until after they were
Wow.
born.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
Well, I feel like maybe we should make a part 2 of this, because one of the things we didn't get to talk about today was how harmonic understanding often goes out the window when people learn decoding, because they're learning to read notes one at a time and devoid of, I mean, not only a tonal context but a harmonic context.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, the reason we do tonal patterns is to what? Establish the harmonic functions. That's exactly
yeah.
what the tonal patterns are for. They come from harmonic functions. So it's like harmonic functions are more basic to music learning theory than tonal patterns.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that.
So anyway, that's crazy talk. I know, but there's still time to sign up for Dr. Eric's harmonic learning sequence class in April, middle of April. Anyway, check out teachmusictokids.com. Get my playlists, all kinds of stuff on there.
Cool.
Yeah, my yes no game. A lot of good stuff. And check out Beau's YouTube library, Beau Talifer Music on YouTube. Good stuff there too, man. I agree with almost everything.
Well, it'd be weird if you agreed with everything. There'd be
Well, it's time to get
there'd be
weird.
there'd be no spice in here.
All right, man. Yeah, let's do a second part. That would be cool.
Yeah, we'll do part 2 here. Cool.
All right, man. Thanks.